Hello, everyone. This is Reality Josiah, and today we will be doing a reaction and recap to this week's Married at First Sight episode. So, we start off this episode with Kristen losing her PJs before she goes to sleep right after her wedding. This is kind of a theme of the night that kind of keeps coming up. Mitch makes a really awkward joke that does not land about that he didn't bring any PJs either. Was not funny at all. And Kristen really just kind of blows it off like, okay, yeah, whatever. And so that kind of goes by. They both kind of just decide to keep it casual. Mitch, of course, has to emphasize to her that, hey, I'm liking you more and more now. That you don't have all the makeup on. You're not wearing the fancy dress. And that's definitely nice of him to say, like, since he really didn't give her a lot of compliments during the wedding. I think it's good that he kind of gets some in now, so I'll take it. She takes it well. The next morning, we find out that Mitch is a picky eater. Who's surprised by that? Absolutely no one. Mitch is a little bit of a mess. And that's one more thing. Kristen's like, that's fine. I kind of assumed you were probably a picky eater. Who assumes anybody's a picky eater? I don't know. But Kristen just kind of blows it off. We're starting to see a trend here where Kristen is pretty much down for whatever. Like, whatever Mitch does, she's like, yeah, it's fine, man. It's all good. And I think it's because of maybe some of her past relationships, like definitely having that wedding not fall through due to the cheating scandal that happened. It's seeming like she just really wants to get married, and she's just ignoring all of the red flags and just kind of smiling her way through them. We then move on to Lindsay and Miguel. Lindsay is losing her freaking mind because guess what? She lost her PJs too. And she starts cussing and kind of tossing some things around. They do a little bit of a segment where it's like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, where Miguel's just waiting in the bedroom like, what the hell is going on here? He eventually goes and knocks on the door. He's like, hey, is everything okay? And he's like, yeah, it's all fine. I need to brush my teeth and, wash my face, do that good stuff. And they have a one-on-one with Miguel where he's like, yeah, there's some red flags starting to show up here, but, I'm married to her, so it's fine. I'm just going to keep on powering through. The next morning, they're just kind of like talking casually in the bed. She mentions that she needs to bring snacks on all of her trips and making sure that she has those ready to go. And she goes on like a rant about how important snacks are and how she kind of freaks out when she doesn't have them because what if you're hungry and there's nowhere to eat and you're just like starving and you're like, are you okay? Like, what have you been through where you weren't able to eat on vacation? Like, I get needing snacks to like snack on here and there, but it's not that big a deal. You can tell she's a bit of a stress ball. And there's another segment where Miguel kind of mentions in his one-on-one segments that he's starting to worry some. There's definitely a lot of red flags showing up around her stress level and just being a little bit antsy. We then move to Nate and Stasha. And they're doing well. They're feeling good. Some red flags that I saw was as soon as they walked into their hotel room, Nate tells Stasha right away, hey, that's my side of the bed. And it's like, what? What if she had a preference? Like, what if she always sleeps on that side of the bed? I mean, I think those are just conversations that a lot of couples just have. Like, hey, I have a preference for this. I really like to be there. Is it okay if I sleep here? Something like that, like, would be nice instead of demanding and telling her, hey, this right here, that's mine. But she didn't seem to care. She's like, all right, whatever. The next morning, they talk about insecurities and things that they've been through. Nate mentions that being mixed, he hasn't really had a chance to fit with either side, and so it's been a big thing for him. And Stasha's been through the same thing, so they were able to really relate and come closer together there. So they're trending in a very positive direction. We move to Justin and Alexis, and it seems like all is good. They're all cuddled up, very cutesy, making jokes, all the good stuff, so no major concerns there. He gets her phone number, a little bit of a funny skit they did, which was cool. The next segment we have here are meeting the families for the first time one-on-one, like where it's just the families and friends and the spouse of their family member. This is usually one of my favorite segments because you just get some crazy questions. You get some family members really going in. This season was solid. Like, it wasn't bad by any means, but there weren't people, like, really trying to get to the truth. There weren't people like, hey, I don't like him or her. It was just pretty meh. We get Stasha meeting with Nate's dad and a friend of his. She mentions to both of them that she works about 10 to 12 hours a day. She is a workaholic, which is definitely true from those numbers. She knows that will definitely have to calm down when she starts to have kids, and she's kind of working on that now already. And she did that after the dad asked more questions and tried to dig a little bit deeper into like, hey, like, how are you going to make this work in a marriage and with having kids? And so, I mean, I think that was probably the right answer there. The dad at the end of the conversation does mention that, like, hey, you both are very stubborn, and he hopes that they don't break each other's hearts, which is a really, like, just read that kind of came out of nowhere. But I feel like he might be seeing something that we're not seeing from both of them so far, so I think that's definitely pretty interesting. Nate meets with Stasha's friends and family. He mentioned that he's willing to wait on sex, like that's not a top priority for him. He casually mentions, just randomly in the conversation, like, hey, I have filed for bankruptcy before, and that I do have some debt. And I don't know how that's going to land with Stasha. Like, I don't know. That's definitely something that would be interesting to kind of dig deeper into. He does get very emotional describing how his mom has just not been a part of his life and that she showed up randomly on his 12th birthday and basically said, hey, nice to meet you, and left, and he hasn't seen her again since. I've talked to some people, and I would say a good chunk of people did not feel like this was very sincere. Stasha's mom is just looking at him straight face like, Anne, like, I don't really think this is you. I don't think these emotions are real. But he is tearing up. I'm on the fence. Like, I think it's very possible he could still be really hurt about not having his mom in his life and her showing up and not really having any strong emotions and or wants to really be there and be a part of his development. I can see how that can really screw with his head a little bit. So even though I don't love Nate from what I've seen so far, I personally do feel like he was being genuine. I don't know. You guys let me know what you think, but I thought that was pretty real. We then get Mitch meeting with Kristen's mom and friends, and once again, the chemistry is still going with Mitch and his mom, and Kristen's mom. He mentions that when he's in a relationship, he definitely wants to give his all. In previous relationships, those haven't lasted because he hasn't been able to be his true self. He's an environmentalist through and through. That's his religion, basically, and he hasn't been able to just be authentically himself. And this whole conversation really feels like him just kind of like interviewing to date Kristen's mom. Like he's giving the smile, the charm, which is something we just really don't see from Mitch, from just conversations we've seen with him with a lot of people. So I'm keeping my eye on that. It's a little bit sketchy. After this, we have Kristen meeting with Mitch's family. And really, Mitch's family is just spilling all the beans. Like, they're talking about how he can be prideful, he can be a bit rude, that he is feeling pressure from this process to make this work, and that since he can be rebellious, you got to make sure that you bring him back in. And it's like, he knew what he was signing up for. He's not a child. Like, why are we trying to force him to stay in this marriage when he signed up for this marriage? Literally. Doesn't make sense. Long story short, she found out he can be a jerk, and she once again just kind of wipes it off. She's like, yeah, that's fine. Like, I can handle that. Worried about that girl. The family asks, like, hey, what are your intentions? A pretty basic question. She completely dodges that for some reason, and she just kind of tells her story about why she is doing Married at First Sight. Which is an interesting thing. Like, when people just start dodging questions for some reason, like, it might mean they're nervous, or maybe she doesn't have the answer to the question, but it was a pretty weird thing to dodge. Alexis, we then get with Alexis and her meeting Justin's family. She mentions that she's been proposed to 3 times, and Justin's mom's like, wait, what'd you say? 3 times? That's crazy. And she's like, why are you ready to get married now if you've dropped 3 proposals? And Alexis is like, hey, I'm a new person now. I'm done running. And Justin's mom like, okay, hopefully you don't break his heart. He's very sensitive. And she's like, yeah, it's fine. I can handle that. I think everyone who hears that story is just like, why would this possibly work? But hey, the experts know what they're doing, so it's fine. We get Justin meeting with Alexis's family, and Alexis's sister kind of shoots straight for the jugular. She's like, hey, you seem nice, you seem cool, but how do you handle your anger, and how do you handle dealing with difficult situations? And Justin pretty much dodges it. He's just like, I like to talk to people. If she's crying, I'm probably crying. If she's upset, we just need to talk it out. Pretty basic, nothing crazy, but that was a pretty good question by her. We then get Miguel meeting with Lindsay and Lindsay's brother, mom, and another family member or friend. And Lindsay's brother kind of gives Miguel some confidence and more details and context around how he needs to be a reassuring presence for Lindsay. When she's kind of being in that stressful mood, you have to be that person who really calms her down and brings her back to reality. Miguel's like, I've already seen that in 24 hours. This is going to be my life now. He's just kind of playing all that through. He doesn't say that, but you can just kind of see him thinking it through, what is going on. He does mention that Lindsay's a very nice, Miguel does mention that Lindsay's a very nice girl, that she's very easy to talk to, that he doesn't see any reason for why they can't get along. So those are the positives, but these negatives are starting to add up some. Her brother and mom mentions how sex and the Bible, you have to really get to know the person inside and out before you have sex. Miguel really just completely ignores everything they say. And he's like, yeah, we're getting to know each other. We'll get there eventually. And it's just I don't think that's really what they were trying to say, but I mean, I'll take it. I thought that was funny. I think Miguel is pretty strong from a communication standpoint. I'm hoping I'm right about that, just because there's a lot of things that just kind of shows maturity when he speaks and how he handles different tough conversations. So hopefully he can help Lindsay with that some. Now Lindsay meets with quite a few people from Miguel's side, his sister's there, some friends, some family. But Miguel's sister is asking the tough questions. Right away, she's like, hey, did you know you guys have different astro signs and astrology signs? And Lindsay's like, oh, no, I didn't realize that. And then she's like, oh, well, those signs, they don't really match too well. And Lindsay looks a little shook, a little frozen, oh, God, I don't even know what to say to this. But I think she gives the right answer eventually. She's basically like, hey, well, he might not be your typical Cancer, and I might be a little bit of a different Aries, and we'll just have to see it through and both put forth 100% effort and hope for the best, which is good. I mean, I think astrology is kind of a light way to start the conversation, but the way that Miguel's sister brought it to the table is just pretty aggressive. Miguel's sister also starts to dig into hey, my brother's awesome. He makes money. He has a good thing going for him. What do you bring to the table? Does he have to take care of you? What is this looking like? And Lindsay, mentions how she was crying not too long ago about all the debt she has from school, and that she's ambitious, but she really just kind of likes to live life. And Miguel's sister was not happy with that answer. She was like, Miguel really loves some ambition. And she just starts to kind of hit her up with hey, it's not his job to take care of you and all this stuff. You could tell it kind of affects Lindsay a little bit, because she goes right to Miguel and is like, hey, I have debt. And we get a one-on-one from Miguel mentioning hey, I'm nobody's sugar daddy. But he kind of handles the conversation well, okay, well, what are you doing to prepare for it? How are you planning to pay it off? Things of that sort. And they have that conversation. We don't get all the details, but we hope that they figure it out. And we kind of jump right into production sending the cast presents and gifts for their trip to Mexico for their honeymoons, which is really cool. I think that's the furthest we've been in quite a few seasons due to COVID, which was nice. That they were able to get a pretty good trip. When the cast, there's a whole traveling segment, no drama like last season. Everyone seems pretty cool. The cast, they all get together in a big group to catch up and talk about how everything's going. Mitch continues to mention how Kristen's mom was the first person I saw. And I was like, am I marrying you? And he says it with a smile, not he's upset about it or anything. He just mentions this all the time. And I was like, I'm sorry, man. They should have given you her. You guys seemed like a little bit of a better match. But Kristen, once again, is like, hey, I'm not mad about it. Like, she's just very upbeat about the whole situation. When you're getting some signs here that he might not be as happy with you, Kristen. Stasha says that Nate is pretty much the male version of her, which is true. Like, in my mind, they look pretty similar. Alexis, of course, feels the need to inform the entire cast that Justin has been celibate. Mitch has like a little bit of a joke where he's like, I've been celibate for like 2 years, if that's what we're calling it, when you just can't get laid. And it's just like, these jokes aren't necessary. No one here really needed to know that Justin was celibate, but whatever. After this, we get a little bit intense, like, session between Nate and Stasha. We're going to call it making out. I don't know what really happened, but we're going to call it making out. We get a very intense segment where Nate tells Stasha, like, hey, we should save water by both getting in the shower together. And she's like, I doubt you are just trying to save water, but why not? And it is full on, I'm not sure this is allowed to be on TV segment. I really haven't seen a shower scene like that on TV before, but I mean, I guess they were able to avoid some parts that made it okay. But yeah, wow. Seems like they're doing pretty well. We then get Morgan and Ben. Their wedding was pretty basic, pretty bland, nothing too crazy. I think Morgan gives a little bit of a segment about how she had a little bit of a sad childhood. Dad's not in her life. Then, of course, we get the Ben segment of him just being super close to his mom, per usual. But yeah, I mean, that was basically the episode. I look forward to seeing how things go next week. Comment and just let me know your thoughts on this week's episode. And don't forget to like and subscribe. See you next week.